Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 290 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine situation reports Putin is making new nuclear first-use threats. Putin said he is mulling the idea of changing Russian military doctrine to include the potential for a preventative nuclear first strike. So this is pretty concerning. Let me show you the quotes. "We're thinking about this," Putin told reporters after a summit in Kyrgyzstan. "If we are talking about a disarming strike, perhaps we should think about using the approaches of our American partners," he said, citing what he called U.S. strategies to use high-accuracy missiles for a preventative strike. So, of course, the United States reserves the right for a first strike against an adversary, but with conventional weapons, not with nuclear weapons. Putin's latest nuclear saber rattle comes just days after he warned about the increasing threat of nuclear war, as his full-on invasion of Ukraine drags on with no apparent end in sight. So this is very telling how poorly the Russian ground forces are performing as Putin continues to saber rattle and talk about his nuclear arsenal. It's the only thing about the Russian military that gets any respect. But if you follow my channel and you watch my videos, you know that last week I uploaded this video, Why Russia Will Not Use Nuclear Weapons in Ukraine. I'll pin it in a linked comment down below. Definitely watch this video if you haven't already seen it. And in this video I make the case that Russia has everything to lose and nothing to gain by using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And here's a prime example of what Russia just lost simply from talking about nuclear weapons. Indian Prime Minister Modi cancels Putin meeting over nuclear threats. This is according to Bloomberg. Indian Prime Minister Modi has backed out of an annual Russian-Indian summit because of Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Bloomberg reported this, citing a source in the Indian government. Modi believes that drawing too much attention to the relationship with the Kremlin could be damaging his own image, his own standing in the world. Putin is quickly becoming radioactive for other world leaders and other governments. So it's not to Putin's advantage to continue talking about nuclear weapons. But for whatever reason, Putin had a lot to say this week. He made several public appearances in which he spoke to the press and talked with Kremlin reporters. So with a champagne glass in his hand, Putin vows for more energy grid attacks against Ukraine. With a drink in his right hand, Putin stood in the Grand Hall of the Kremlin on Thursday and proclaimed that the ongoing barrages against Ukraine's power infrastructure, which have left millions struggling without electricity and water in frigid weather, he claims it is a response to the October 8th attack on the Kerch Bridge, the prized $4 billion bridge linking Russia to the Crimean Peninsula. So Putin looks a little tipsy in this clip. He's been drinking champagne all night and for whatever reason feels in a good mood. So let's watch about 40 seconds of this clip admitting to his war crimes in Ukraine.
Все бредни, информационное противостояние, информационные вбросы, всякие фейки должны остаться в стороне. Не должны мешать нам выполнять свой долг перед нашими людьми. Да и не надо быть особенно искушенным в этом информационном противоборстве, чтобы понимать, что происходит на самом деле. Вот сейчас много шума по поводу наших ударов по энергетической инфраструктуре соседней страны. Да, мы делаем это. Но кто начал? Кто ударил по мосту по Крымскому?
Who struck the Crimean Bridge? And no one actually knows. We suspect that it was a truck bomb traveling over the bridge, but how did the Ukrainian military or Ukrainian intelligence services accomplish that? How did they get past the scanners and all of the Russian security protecting that bridge? More than likely, it was Russian citizens, Russian nationals, either taking points or at least participating in that strike on the bridge. But Putin isn't going to admit to that. He's going to just 100% blame Ukraine. Something also hilarious about this gathering is, do you notice anything in common with all of these military officers that Putin invited for this event at the Kremlin? Putin is 5'7", about 170 centimeters tall. And Putin is very insecure about his height, so the number one quality that these Russian officers have that Putin appreciates is they're the same height as him or shorter. Here's a picture of what normal Russian men look like compared to Putin. Putin feels very insecure about this. And even if you're 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", you're probably going to get pushed off to the side of any group photos. So here's the reality of what life is like for Ukrainians. I'm not Ukrainian. I've never been to Kyiv. I don't want to speak on their behalf. But from what I'm seeing on social media, let me share some of this with you. Here's a picture on Reddit, typical Ukrainian home now, ready for the next blackouts, and you can see they have a charging station for all of these batteries. They're going to survive on the batteries when they lose power. Here is pictures of additional generators being sent from Western allies. Every day on social media, I see pictures of trucks and buses bringing in new capacity, new capability, new generators to help the civilian population get through this difficult winter. Here's a video I found of a supermarket in Kyiv that lost electricity, and people just have to continue shopping like they normally would. As you can see, people are using their phones as flashlights and just carrying on like normal, doing their daily shopping. If anything, this supermarket is saving on energy costs, refrigerating everything in the store. Here's a video I also want to share of ordinary people on the streets of Kyiv being asked, what do you do during the blackouts? What do you do when you lose power?
В принципі, є чим себе зайняти. Ні, серйозно, в принципі, я рахую, що ситуація, яка складається, це вимушені міри, і, в принципі, поки все спокійно. Чесно кажучи, мені вже пофігу на ці відключення. Я лягаю спати і розважаю себе гарними снами. Дуже подобається.
Я малюю, в мене є картина, я малюю. Масло. Я скажу, я таке глупе, ми танцюємо трохи перед другом. Але це
Мобільний інтернет.
да, ми читаємо в своїх гаджетах, він свій, а я свій, отак розмовляємо. А якщо в нас є додаткова лампа, яку ми купили, то ми намагаємося читати.
Розважаємо, дивимося фільми на Ютубі, як закачуємо, якщо раніше, і в карти граємо, деякі ігри, так.
Чим розважаю? Спілкуюсь вдома з дитиною. Чудова можливість.
So does this look like a civilian population about to surrender to the Russians? Yes, life is difficult, this is very inconvenient, but the Ukrainians are just adapting and they will easily survive this winter. Russia's plan, their grand scheme to freeze Ukraine and freeze Europe this winter, it's not going to win, and everyone's going to realize this pretty soon. So with Putin's special limited military operation going into its 10th month, how does he talk about it when speaking to the press? Let me show you about 30 or 40 seconds of this clip, once again speaking at this summit in Kyrgyzstan.
Что касается длительности процесса СВО, я имел в виду длительность процесса урегулирования. СВО идет своим чередом, там все стабильно у нас. Никаких вопросов там и проблем сегодня нет. Ну, все, вы видите, это достаточно прозрачно ведет себя Министерство обороны. Все, что происходит.
So there's no issues or problems. The Ministry of Defense is being adequately transparent. That might be the best joke Putin has ever told. Because in the same speech, he admits that Russia can't supply clothes to the frontline soldiers. Putin admitted that there have been problems procuring equipment and clothes for the hundreds of thousands of men called up to fight in Ukraine. And there's a reporter or someone who is able to ask Putin a question about all of these social media reports from soldiers on the front lines saying they don't have adequate equipment, they don't have medicine, they don't have body armor, they're not getting enough food. Here's her question, and look at how Putin responds.
Армии, вы говорили, что проблемы решаются или они уже решены, но тем не менее поток сообщений от бойцов с передовой не прекращается, обращения поступают к военкорам, к волонтерам, они просят не только обмундирования, это и медицина в том числе, потому что расходники очень быстро заканчиваются. И такой вопрос, кому верить, отчетам Министерства обороны или бойцам с передовой?
Верить никому нельзя. Только мне можно.
Хорошо.
So that's what a dictator would say. That's what fascism is all about. You can't trust anyone else. You can only trust me. Who are you going to believe? The dear leader, Vladimir Putin, savior of Russia, or your lying friends and relatives currently serving on the front lines in Ukraine? You can't trust them. You can't trust your own lying eyes and lying ears. You can only trust what Putin tells you. But it's all going to the toilet. Russia's oil exports plunge on EU price cap amongst the latest round of sanctions. According to data from Kepler, Russian seaborne oil shipments fell 16% just on Tuesday. Russia's central bank has called the sanctions new economic shocks that could derail the economy. So let's go ahead and check on the price of Urals oil. This is how much Russia is getting for their oil exports. And just a month ago, Putin was getting a pretty decent price of $82 a barrel. But with central banks rising interest rates, global demand for energy is falling. And now with this price cap, nobody wants anything to do with Russian energy exports. The price for a barrel of oil coming out of the Urals is now $52. So Putin is pretty concerned, but also pretty furious. And Putin is now threatening oil production cuts over this proposed price cap. Russia will not sell oil to any country that imposes a price cap on its oil exports and is considering reducing its oil production. Great! Thank you, Putin. That's kind of the point of the price cap. We want you to either sell your oil for cheap or just stop producing. Either way, that's less money and less revenue for the Russian government. Even if Russia cuts production and this causes global energy prices to go back up because there's less Russian oil on the market, there's still no way for Russia to get around the price cap of $60. That is the max they're allowed to make on their oil exports now. It doesn't matter if they cut production or not, they're not making any more money. Next story that should concern Putin, Ukrainian Nobel Peace Prize winner calls for Putin War Crimes Tribunal. So this woman right here is Alexandra Medvedchuk. She's the head of the Center for Civil Liberties. Her organization won the Nobel Peace Prize this year, and she used her opportunity to accept her award in Norway to call for an international tribunal to begin investigating and then processing criminal charges against Putin and all of his top military leadership. In this video, Putin has already admitted to war crimes. Targeting civilian infrastructure and civilian power plants is a war crime. So it's not looking good for Putin, and here's an interesting article. Putin has a plan to flee to South America if he loses the war in Ukraine. This is according to a former Kremlin aide. So the Kremlin started coming up with an evacuation plan for Putin in the spring, and it involves fleeing to either Venezuela or Argentina. This is from an ex-speechwriter for Putin, Abbas Galimov, who I assume has fled to the West. And this is funny. Putin first considered a plan to evacuate to China, but he might not feel safe in China. China doesn't take kindly to losers. China likes winners, and that is not what Vladimir Putin currently is. And what the heck is up with Nazis and fascists always fleeing to Argentina? This is kind of a joke in popular culture here in the United States about well-known Nazis who did emigrate to Argentina. The conspiracy being is that Hitler didn't really kill himself, he secretly fled to Argentina. So Putin literally is copying page for page the Nazi playbook from World War II. He is doing everything wrong, everything evil to... I don't even know how to describe all this, it's so insane. But why isn't Putin planning to flee to one of his friendly countries, one of his CSTO allies, if the government in Moscow collapses? Why doesn't he, for example, go to Kazakhstan? Shouldn't they be buddy-buddies? And here's a clip I have to share with you of Armin Sharif. He's a public figure and professional journalist from Kazakhstan, and he posted on YouTube a reply to an arrogant speech and threats from the Russian ambassador to Kazakhstan. Russia is losing its influence amongst its neighbors and is rightfully viewed by all of them as a threat. So let's watch about a minute and a half of this clip together.
Друзья, сегодня мне мое безупречное знание русского языка позволит дать отповедь этому идиоту, послу Российской Федерации в Казахстане, некто Бородавкину. Заявил о том, что в Казахстане живут нацисты, националисты. Если надо будет, то мы там проведем специальную военную операцию. Слушай, проводилка у тебя сломалась, Бородавкин, и у твоего патрона Путина. Вы уже 9-й месяц получаете звездюлей от доблестных украинцев. И я могу сказать, не дай бог, вы еще решите зайти к нам за легкой победой. Легкой победы у вас не будет. Вся казахстанская степь будет усыпана трупами ваших мобиков. Так вот, я могу сказать, когда ты говоришь о русофобии в Казахстане, то я хочу сказать, что в первую очередь эту русофобию сеете вы, такие как ты, Бород.
Go Kazakhstan. There's another minute to this clip. I'll link it in a pinned comment down below. It's worth watching and pretty interesting how people in Kazakhstan view Russia now and are willing to openly say this about them to their face. Final feel-good clip I have for you is of a Ukrainian soldier, Alexander Mizura. He's currently 34 years old, and he fought for Ukraine back in 2014. He was heavily wounded fighting against the separatist forces, and while in the hospital, he met his American wife and moved to Chicago. So he's been living in the United States since 2016. When Russia invaded in February, he returned to Ukraine to protect the country. Let's watch about 1.5 minutes of this clip about this individual.
Третя хвиля мобілізації, я був добровольцем, попав в 42-й батальйон, де проходив службу. Сама гаряча точка була Дебальцевський котел, де був тяжко поранений. У мене було 4 поранення обличчя, спини, руки і ноги. Почали спілкуватися. На одну операцію прилетіла, на другу прилетіли. І так десь через місяці 8, десь так. Кажу, слухай, надоїло це тобі літати? Кажу, виходь за мене. Каже, окей. В літаку я ще познайомився з американцями, які летіли також на війну в Україну проти Росії. І коли я запитував, чому ви летите в Україну, кажуть, ми по телевізору бачили, вбивають дітей. Ми не можемо на це дивитися спокійно. Хай живий ще бігаю, доки буду воювати.
That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I appreciate hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.